Hi, Christina.
Hi, nice to meet you, Paramita.
Like I was saying in the introduction, you are the sustainability officer at LIST. So what was that about? What was your research and your work about within LIST?
Yes, so I joined LIST actually in 2016. It was my second job after my PhD. So second institution, I would say, maybe not second job, but second institution. And also in LIST, I moved within the years to different roles and different functions. So I started, I think, rather typical as a senior engineer.
Right.
So being in a research department, in the environmental research and innovation department. And from that role, I moved into other roles, amongst them being the sustainability officer, which was a part-time role, because I was also, as we said, Chargée de mission to the director of the environmental research and innovation department, so ERIN department. And in the sustainability officer role, it was less a research activity. It was more an organizational role to integrate sustainability into the organization. What can we mean by that? So we need to, in an organization, and that's what I also understood within my time in LIST, that moving from a research project role into a more, let's say, managerial, may sound a bit high level, but more into an organizational role means a lot about managing and understanding, defining processes, defining tools for an organization to move an organization. And that is what sustainability today is about in organizations. It's a lot about analyzing, defining new performance indicators and implementing them in processes. And that's what we did in as a team, with me being the sustainability officer, but having a team also of, we know in LIST we have a big department and a big group about of life cycle assessment experts, so LCA experts, and they help to analyze the carbon footprint of LIST. So that's today, I think, common practice, and a lot of organizations are doing that. The regulation is also pushing organizations to do this type of analysis. But then what do we do about it? And how can we reduce our emissions? Is certainly our direct emissions is certainly one aspect that LIST was looking at, to define new policies and measures to reduce its own footprint, looking into purchasing green public procurement, looking into mobility, looking into energy use of the organization, electricity use. So this is the direct emissions. But then, and that's really interesting and fully aligned with LIST's mission as an RTO, is about, how can the technologies that we develop not only address a societal and sustainable development objective, making, for example, developing energy efficient materials, or developing mobility solutions that use less energy, but on the other hand as well, to develop these technologies in a sustainable way.
Right.
And that is sustainable by design, and that is an indicator we defined as part of the sustainability mission and trajectory of LIST.
So you were looking at sustainability from the point of view of the organization, as well as from the projects that the organization was involved in.
Yes, and in particular in the technologies. So we know that LIST has the ambition to develop technologies for the market or for the society.
Yes.
And so these technologies then go up the TRL level. And that means that during the research activities at each stage, we can gather qualitative information, quantitative information about the impact of the technology. And we can take decisions at certain gates to say, well, here, and we can have a certain exclusion criteria, for example.
Right.
We don't use hazardous chemicals, or we exclude specific types of materials for our research, or we don't work in certain sectors. I mean, these are some decisions you can take while you develop the technology to bring it to the market.
Yes. You spoke of your PhD. What was your thesis about? Was it something related to this?
My thesis was about it was in plant ecophysiology. So analyzing plant mechanisms, hydraulic mechanisms that determine plants. So in my case, it was maize mainly, and also a bit I did research on wheat, responses to drought stress.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And that means drought stress can have different natures, so soil moisture, but also demand from the air, because if the air is dry, there's a lot of stress, hydrological stress on the plant.
Why I asked is because I wanted to see if there was some sort of a link, or an underlying current between your research, your research interest, and your work at LIST, and now what you're doing.
Yes, I think the general there is a general red thread or line throughout these. Maybe from outside they seem like different blocks in my career, and maybe a bit unorganized, but there is a line in all of that, and that is already from choosing a scientific discipline at my studies. I was driven by saying, well, finding a utility through work and through my studies, but later on also in my work. It's very important for me to be aligned to my values and to know, well, I can contribute to some of the main challenges in society. And today we have the SDGs, which I think are very solid framework.
Sustainable Development Goals.
Yes, exactly. And there are a lot of SDGs that make a lot of sense. Not only for Luxembourg, but also for Europe, and also for countries in the global south, if we want to say so, in developing countries. And that is a bit a line that I follow in my career. So from my studies, life sciences, doing the PhD, looking into developing plants that can withstand drought stress better, and by understanding the underlying mechanisms, to then working for the EU in food safety, and then moving to the LIST and coming a bit back to sustainability in organizations or sustainability policies of states, so supporting the government as well on the implementation of certain environmental laws. In between, I went back to university as well and did some postgraduate studies.
Oh, wow, okay.
Because I found it important, to broaden the scope a bit and to come out of this. Maybe it's also how people look at you when you study life science and you do a PhD. You're often perceived as as an expert, and sustainable development needs a broader view, needs a holistic approach, and that also brought me to LIST to say, that's an organization where I can work, where I can see that we drive a sustainable impact in society and with companies.
And currently, what are you doing at ADA? What does your job involve exactly?
So ADA is a Luxembourgish-based NGO.
Yes.
I joined the organization as a program head of program, and that means I have a small team of program managers that and the programs and the projects consist in technical assistance. So that means that we are supporting locally organizations, often, you're right, in the financial sector. So often these organizations provide financial services to vulnerable rural populations, for example, smallholder farmers.
Right.
So, for example, microfinance institutions providing credits to smallholder farmers under affordable and adequate conditions, so that there is a strong focus on consumer protection as well and preventing over-indebtedness. So working with a high ethical standard while allowing microfinance institutions to doing business. And our programs, so my work consists in defining these programs and defining projects together with our partner organizations. For example, in Guatemala or in Senegal, or in Rwanda.
If you can just tell us in very sort of layman's terms, what does it mean when you say, things like inclusive finance for sustainable agriculture and forestry?
So it means that different types of actors in the society, being it households,
Yes.
being it women, business women,
Yes.
small entrepreneurs that run companies, or farmers. I think this could be some groups of actors, or small and medium-sized enterprises, often in developing countries, can go to financial institutions. So it's often not banks like we have in Luxembourg here or in Europe, but microfinance institutions, and ask for financial services. So that can be, for example, loan products, to buy, for example, seeds and fertilizers in the case of the smallholder farmers. Or in the case of an entrepreneur, have access to finance to buy some equipment, to renew the equipment, or to enlarge the business, to get access to working capital, for example, as well, to run the business, to buy stock that can then be sold, to develop the business. And that can be, or for households, take a loan because there's an immediate need, or because you want also to extend your house. So that there are financial service providers, like banks or microfinance institutions, providing access to finance for everybody,
so
according to needs, at affordable terms, and with a high ethical standard. So there's a lot about sustainable and responsible investment today. And these are very important principles as well, to avoid that there is any kind of, there's a high risk of over-indebtedness, for example, of clients, because they can take loans. And then also we're speaking about interest rates, meaning that the terms are affordable and adequate in terms of the needs of the client, but also a business opportunity for those providing the access to finance.
Coming back to your time at List, so looking back, if you had to pick out one project or one of many projects, or one rewarding project that you could think of, what would it be?
So I think I have two. One is the one we already touched upon a bit, with the performance indicator development of List, to say, well, the organization is developing sustainable technologies by considering also the dimensions of sustainable development. So societal, environmental, and economic. So that is the sustainable by design principles. And so we started to say, well, what KPI, what performance indicator can List have to demonstrate it develops these technologies? And that was not so easy, because List has a large variety of technologies and projects and research activities. So to define that, not only the KPI, also the underlying process and the tools, was very rewarding, because you really need to conceptualize, but you also need to make it pragmatic and concrete for the research community within List. And you want to drive a certain message through the organization. And the other one was an organizational project as well, to define a process for project definition and to make it lean. And that was the Linera project.
Okay. So you were behind it.
I was part of the team.
Oh,
yes.
excellent.
So we were the three departments, and the three research departments, and the administration as well. And so we're developing this together. So it was a bottom-up initiative.
Yeah.
And it was needed to say, well, what are our processes? And what is the first process was about defining projects. Then the next one would be about managing projects, where now I don't have a view on. But really, I think it was rewarding. It was a difficult project. The team was great. And it delivered in the end a process that was not overloaded with, I think, also from a cost efficiency point of view, not overloading the things. So it was a good exercise, and I have a very positive memory of it because you see, well, to build something within an organization, and for LIST, this is really, if you want to drive impact, you need to have your processes in place.
Yeah.
You cannot have individual excellent researchers without having the framework.
Absolutely. This question might sound a little ignorant, probably, but I was wondering, coming back to your work, what you're doing at ADA, are there partnerships between research organizations like LIST?
Yes. So we have already collaborated with LIST as well,
Okay.
ADA and LIST, yes, to define tools for environmental impact assessment of projects. And that is actually with Enrico Benetto's team to develop a feasible assessment methodology supported by a tool, an Excel tool that ADA and ADA's partners can use to define for example, in the energy sector, where ADA works with microgrid operators, to define, well, what is actually the avoided emissions that we realize through these type of projects. And that is the aim also, that our partners can, of course, valorize this impact. That is an area of research where I could imagine that ADA and LIST could continue to collaborate.
I've been ending these episodes with 3 questions that I'm asking our guests. First of which is, if you had to pick one LIST innovation that you like, your favorite innovation that came out of LIST.
My favorite innovation that came out of LIST. It's certainly in the Green Tech Innovation Centers area, and it's about the microbiome cocktails in the Biotech group.
Microbiome?
Yes.
I've never heard of this. This is the first time microbiome cocktails.
Yes. Magdalena Kalusinska.
Yes, she is one of my next guests.
Okay.
Yes, great. I'm going to ask her.
Yes, exactly. So I think this innovation, of course, it's a team around her.
Right.
And there has been a long-term research trajectory. And that also shows that great innovations do not come overnight.
Yes.
It's building this up. And I joined LIST and it was already ongoing. But I think it's a highlight in terms of relevance. And in terms of, I'm a biotechnologist, so it's also close to my heart, this type of technologies, where you build on a strong knowledge of microbiota and microbiome behavior to drive biological processes. And biological processes that can live on and rely on, let's say, residues. So you valorize biomass and you don't enter into competition with the food market, for example. You can valorize residues and you can make valuable compounds out of it. You can strengthen biomass-driven energy processes. So I find it fascinating that you can streamline and manage, optimize biological processes by working on the microbiome.
Excellent. My second question is: do you have a colleague that you want to that influenced your work or that inspired you when you were at LIST?
There are many.
Yes.
So
I can
there are
imagine.
a lot of very competent people driven really by the mission to for sustainable development, to make this place a better, to make this world a better place. And but I think very pragmatic. It's a lot about managing organizations, managing process. I would cite Bruno Cornet. We are still in contact, so he's a valorization and technology transfer officer.
Right.
I could learn a lot from him about bringing technologies to the market. That you need a process, you need to streamline, you need to have, you need to be open, and you need to gather inputs to drive this, and you need to plan.
Yeah.
If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So I think that it's not his quote, but I'm not quoting him. But I think he has a great experience with LIST and one of the predecessor institutes of LIST.
So if there is a book or a podcast that you would like to recommend to our listeners.
That would be a book, because podcasts I'm not listening very much to it.
Yes.
And the book is Give Work from Leila Jana.
Okay.
It's about poverty alleviation, and she speaks about bringing digital economy jobs to poor and less qualified and less skilled people in developing countries. So she started that program in several countries like India, for example, with big tech companies.
So we are coming to the end of our podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for accepting to do this podcast with us.